Something seismic just occurred. For weeks the country felt frozen in place, paychecks halted, benefits on hold, tension building like a pressure valve ready to blow. Then, without warning, the silence cracked. A single directive went out, direct, final, unmistakable. Airspace across the Caribbean locked down. 35 seconds surged into formation. Naval groups shifted toward Venezuela's coast. And at the very same moment in American cities, protesters confronted ICE officers, trying to pull detainees from federal vans. Streets erupted. Congress stumbled. The media spun. And through the noise, one truth emerged. The shutdown saga was never only about funding, it was about control. While critics obsessed over partisan theater, the administration was moving on a coordinated plan targeting narco-terror networks stretching from Venezuela to the U.S. border, a maneuver that stunned opponents, cornered protest leaders, and forced Washington insiders to admit someone had just outplayed everyone. Here's what actually happened, what order Trump gave, and why the protest coalition never saw it coming. We're now watching one of the most intricate plays of recent politics unfold in real time. It's day 31 of the shutdown, and the system is buckling. Picture it, more than 13,000 air traffic controllers without a paycheck for over a month. Tens of thousands of federal union workers in the same spot, airports running on fumes, safety inspectors stretched thin, and then the gut punch for millions of households snap. The food program that helps put groceries on tables for over 40 million Americans, November 1st, should have been payout day. Instead, empty mailboxes and parents wondering how to feed their kids. When a government's basic functions wobble, safety, stability, food, frustration doesn't simmer, it boils. That's where we were. The pressure gauge was redlining. While the media fixated on congressional theatrics and blame games, a different decision took shape behind closed doors. When it landed, it wasn't a bargain or a handshake. It was a command. Think about times when process slows everything to a crawl: permits, committees, rules designed to delay. In the Senate, that's the filibuster, the 60-vote wall that stops most bills cold. In a divided government, that's a near impossible threshold. So what do you do when the clock is ticking and millions are waiting? You change the rules you're allowed to change. That's what Trump authorized, what Washington calls the nuclear option. Not bombs, procedure. Removing the filibuster for budget measures so a continuing resolution can pass with 50 votes plus the vice president. Cutting the knot. And this isn't unheard of. Democrats have used similar steps for judges and priorities before. So when people gasp, "But what about next time?" Well, next time already happened. The tool exists. The question is, who uses it when it actually counts? Leadership isn't choosing what's popular, it's choosing what's necessary. The old order wasn't serving the public, it was serving itself. When a crisis touches tens of millions of lives, you don't wait for perfect consensus, you act. That's what happened. Faced with paralysis, pain, and political games over paychecks and benefits, the order was, enough, move. And it worked. The Senate budged, the logjam cracked, and suddenly, the story shifted from, will this ever reopen? To, what comes next? But that was only half the play. While Capitol Hill consumed the headlines, another board lit up the Caribbean. The biggest moves often happen while everyone watches elsewhere. Distract with one hand, advance with the other. As furlough interviews and marches dominated TV, the Pentagon quietly mobilized. Airspace near Puerto Rico closed. F-35 seconds scrambled. Naval assets redeployed along choke points. The focal point, Venezuela. This isn't just a troubled neighbor, it's a failed state under Nicolas Maduro, buoyed by foreign adversaries and narco cartels. Those cartels don't stop at the coastline, their product floods American towns, wrecking families and fueling violence. So the shift off Venezuela's coast wasn't theater, it was a message: we see you, we know your roots, and we're not letting this continue. For decades, we've been mopping the floor: arrests, intercepts at the border, treatment after addiction takes hold. Important but reactive. This was go for the leak. Interdict at the source. And it wasn't just about speedboats or Maduro's cronies. This is an entire narco-terror ecosystem. Cartels with military-grade weapons, officials who grease the roots, terror groups using drug cash to bankroll operations. That's not ordinary crime, it's a transnational security threat. When U.S. forces started hitting narco-terror targets in international waters, the chorus in Washington rose: outrage, legality debates, claims the president was acting as judge and jury. One lawmaker even called it the death penalty for drug dealing. But here's the core question. Should armed actors running drugs in hostile waters killing Americans without ever firing a shot get the same process as a citizen in a courtroom? On one side, require full congressional sign-off for every strike, peacetime legal standards for enemies who don't honor any. On the other, as Sen. John Kennedy put it, these are terrorists, every bit as deadly as jihadists, and the president is finally hitting them. There's a hard truth about ideals versus survival. If you insist on tying your own hands while your adversaries ignore every rule, that isn't virtue, it's naivete. Holding values doesn't mean refusing to act, it means acting decisively while owning the responsibility. So while committees drafted letters, the order was already underway, routes were disrupted, kingpins neutralized. The flow toward our border dipped not a silver bullet, but a real shift in leverage. And Maduro? The strongman in Caracas suddenly saw U.S. just off his coast, watched his narco partners get rolled up, and had to wonder if he was next. Back home, the temperature spiked. As precision strikes played out at sea, ICE enforcement ramped up in American cities. You've seen the clips, activists surrounding an ICE vehicle, daylight, phones out. This wasn't peaceful chanting, they tried to pull a detainee from federal custody. Agents had a split-second choice, stand down or enforce the law. They enforced it. Arrests followed, accusations flew, social feeds exploded, and one basic point got lost. Protest is a right. Obstructing federal officers is not. The moment you physically interfere with a custody transfer, you've crossed into criminal interference. Officers are obligated to respond. Strategically, these confrontations didn't weaken the administration's position, they reinforced it. For every viral clash, millions of otherwise moderate viewers saw chaos and said, "That's not okay." Those images became the most persuasive argument for law and order enforcement that the administration could have asked for. Zoom out. The Senate maneuver showed control. The Caribbean posture showed strength. The icy actions showed follow-through. 3 fronts, 1 through line, alignment. In any complex system, supply chain, spacecraft, government alignment is everything. If components fight each other, systems fail. If they synchronize, you get power and speed. That's what happened. One operation executed across multiple domains. Media outlets chased each thread in isolation and missed the weave. And there was another front, information. The press went into overdrive, one network warning of imminent war with Venezuela, another hosting constitutional debates over maritime strikes, a third framing ICE enforcement as civil rights abuse. Few stopped to ask the obvious. What if this is connected? In modern information warfare, clarity isn't always the objective. Sometimes ambiguity is intentional. If opponents don't know what to counter first, if they're juggling 3 fires at once, they make mistakes. That's not deception. That's strategy. Anyone who's run a big project knows, you don't telegraph every move to those trying to block you. You act, then let the results show. And the results were tangible. Shipments interdicted, networks disrupted, federal workers on a path back to pay, SNAP payments moving again, helped, in part, by the courts. 2 federal judges in different circuits ordered the administration to continue SNAP disbursements during the shutdown, noting the statute doesn't pause with politics. On paper, that looked like a loss. In practice, it bolstered the administration's framing. We'll follow the law, and this proves why the Senate had to act. The pressure shifted right back to Congress. Sometimes the smart move isn't to blast through a barrier, it's to reroute, and let the barrier become your proof. Put all the pieces on one board, the shutdown brinkmanship, the nuclear option green light, the Venezuela posture, ICE enforcement, media churn, court rulings. Each is big alone, together they're leverage. If you press one button, your opponent concentrates there. If you press 6, they must choose which to defend, which to concede. While they're choosing, you control tempo. That's the game here. Fight on multiple planes, and make each plane amplify the others. The Hill fight leveraged Congress. The Caribbean posture leveraged hostile regimes and domestic skeptics. The IC actions leveraged sanctuary jurisdictions and activist networks. Even adverse court rulings created public opinion leverage by casting the White House as the actor complying with law while demanding action. Most people didn't see it because we're trained to think linearly: one issue, one response, one news cycle. Trump doesn't operate linearly. He stacks variables and watches who can keep up. Call it chaos if you want, it's also high-stakes problem solving. Our challenge is drug trafficking, illegal crossings, institutional dysfunction. Adversarial regimes aren't siloed, they're interlinked. Solve them one at a time with slow, consensus-only methods. And you'll always be behind. This play seized initiative and forced everyone else into reaction. That's leadership under pressure. What are the consequences? Abroad, if Maduro's network is genuinely destabilized, pressure from U.S. operations, internal unrest, economic collapse pushing transition, that's a regional quake. Fewer hostile actors on our doorstep. Potential for refugees to return. A warning to other rogue states that choosing our adversaries carries costs. The risk, of course, is the post-dictator vacuum, history's caution flag. The strike is not the finish. Stabilization is. At home, precedent matters. The nuclear option, aggressive ICE's actions, norm-bending speed, they set examples others can reuse. Some will cheer decisive government. Others will worry about eroding guardrails. Both instincts are understandable. Tools used today will be available tomorrow. Stability doesn't mean no conflict, it means surviving conflict and coming out stronger. Amid all the strategy, real people live the fallout. Federal workers who went a month unpaid, parents who rely on SNAP, immigrants documented and undocumented facing raids, communities gutted by opioids shipped by the very networks being targeted. Holding two truths at once is grown-up politics: secure the border and keep compassion, crush narco-terror and mourn addiction's victims. Complexity isn't an enemy, it's reality. There are lessons anyone can use. Timing matters. Waiting for perfect conditions often means never acting. Coordination multiplies impact. Pieces that align hit harder than any single blow. Expect resistance. Plan for courts, media, activism, and move anyway if the objective merits it. Narrative matters, but outcomes matter more. Did the government reopen? Did the flow of drugs slow? Are laws enforced? Those are the metrics people remember. In one sense, the immediate storm has passed. In another, the undercurrents remain: polarization, gridlock, threats abroad, pressure at home. This wasn't a resolution, it was a reprieve. The next chapter is already drafting itself. We will face more standoffs, more moments where the old rules don't fit the crisis. And in those moments we'll decide what kind of country we are: one that clings to procedures even when they fail, or one that adapts and accepts the responsibility that comes with decisive action. We'll choose between leaders who avoid risk and leaders who shoulder it. If there's a single takeaway, it's this: power isn't static. It's exercised, challenged, checked, and recalibrated constantly. The people who shape outcomes aren't those waiting for permission, they're the ones who see the window, tally the risks, and move. The order was given, protest leaders misjudged. The system bent, but didn't break. Now we live with the consequences, intended and unintended, but undeniably significant. The real question isn't whether you agree with every step that was taken. It's what we do next. Moments like this expose who we are, what we value, and how we adapt, and they set the stage for everything that follows.